You know what? The MrGirl subject is still being talked about to this day. It's still being brought up. And I wish people would be more honest about why they defend him instead of posturing at this sort of idea that he's this mastermindful genius that nobody's ever thought of, right? The reason why people love talking about MrGirl so much is two reasons. Number one, it gets their political enemies mad. It gets communists on Twitter mad. It gets shitlords on Twitter mad because they think he's a pedophile. I'm like, no, he's not a pedophile. Actually, for this conversation, that's one of the main reasons. The other main reason is simply because they think talking about edgy shit and not caring about wanting to change people makes you better than having a clearly stated message bent on making people think critically. Because I was watching a relevant stream about this, and MrGirl's core philosophy is he doesn't want to change people. I mentioned before, doesn't want to change people. He wants to keep them the way they are, all their positions the same. But he constantly talks about political content. He constantly brings up trans issues, Kyle Rittenhouse. He even criticized Steven Crowder. Like, he constantly brings up political issues. He's basically stating, I'm an apolitical person, but let me talk about these political issues. Like, you can't have this idea that you don't want to change anybody's mind because you want everybody to be themselves while having politically charged, heavily charged content that is solely bent on putting your perspective out, your opinion out that you think is right at all times. What you can say for his position, the most charitable, is that he wants to be more appealing to a broader audience, which then therefore could mean he has a wider scope of range to spread his message out to everybody and then convey that, hey, you know, we shouldn't be hateful. That's the most charitable thing we can give about this. But the problem is he has opinions that he doesn't want to change his mind on. So I feel like it's projection, right? Because he has opinions such as the gender position, where he doesn't want to change his mind on that at all. A couple of positions as well, but I think gender position is the main one, where since he doesn't want to change his mind on the subject, he wants to make content where he doesn't have to change his mind about other people because that's how the content he wants to consume, which within itself is not entirely coherent. Because again, if you're making any sort of politically leaning content, your whole intent, whether you mean to or not, is to state your opinion as a correct opinion and have people think about their position while watching your video. Now, whether or not you want to intentionally convey them or sway them with saying a third by saying populist phrases is all up to you, and it's all about the messaging and the optics, how you say it. But the core principle of not wanting to change people's minds by stating something is flawed. It really is. And I genuinely feel like people read way more into what he's saying instead of directly seeing what he's saying. This isn't some like 5D chess, just look behind 30 different layers of deep, nuanced discussion to find out what he's saying. He's telling you what he's saying. In multiple interviews, he has said directly that, oh yeah, no, the position I said as a joke, I actually mean it. Well, technically it's half joke, but I do kind of mean it. Like, there was an interview I was watching earlier. It was like the really cursed interview way back in 2008, where he was telling a woman that, yeah, I do think women are stupid, and me making them think about discussions is correct because they don't want to hear what I have to say.
What I'd have to like talk about, I'm wondering if it's all completely satire though. Because when I'm reading these newsletters and they talk about, you have, and I quote, girls don't like me because I make them think, I sometimes feel like you almost feel that deep down. Or is this all?
Or not so deep down. No, that's not really.
Do you mean that? Like?
Yeah, I think a lot of girls, yeah, I mean, they're not all satire. I think a lot of girls, allow themselves to be objectified and sort of feel more comfortable being objectified because they're used to it.
Really? So,
yeah.
Well, then you're doing stuff that you really think and then stuff that you don't. Like, how are people supposed to tell the difference? You know what I'm
if
saying?
I'm saying something like completely insane, like sex shouldn't feel good to women, then I'm kidding, I guess. But I don't know.
And then he goes on to talk about his political points. So the thing is, like, saying edgy shit and then when confronted about edgy shit and then saying you believe it and then stating your point about why that joke being edgy is still has, like, this is basic conservative debate tactics 101. Like, not to be any bad faith, well poised and whatever, but think about it this way, right? You have a bunch of conservatives, you have a bunch of Nazis joking about really outlandish shit, and then you're like, do you really think this? And they're like, well, kinda, yes. Then it wasn't a joke. Again, this is very, very basic, very simple. Like, I don't want to think all the people who agree with MrGirl are stupid, because they're not. They're purposely ignoring this absolutely blatantly obvious talking point to divert from the humor and get into direct talking points that they want to talk about because of the fact that it's making their political enemies mad. Who are their political enemies? Again, shit tier communist leftists on Twitter. Now look, the further you look into Mr. Girl's history, the more you understand that even if everything he's saying is a joke and none of it is real, he has made dedicated, serious content about this stuff consistently. And why do we look at someone who is constantly making material, either satirical or not, about one or two specific subjects, and then when confronted about one or two specific subjects, he either jokes about it or has a really demented position on said subject? Like, why do we look at that and then not want to go, well, that's kind of fucked up? Like, come on. It's just a very simple take to have here. Looking at that clip, right, and then looking at how he talks about sex in general and consent in general, you can start to have questions on his nature, on his intent of his messaging in general, right? Like, that's how that works. If you see someone's past history, they haven't changed, they haven't addressed it, and when you fully confront them, they don't peel back any of their messaging. They just say, oh, I shouldn't have said it that way, or oh, it was a joke then, and they still believe what they said back then, which is horrendously awful, right? I generally feel like the way certain communities have fell for this man's tactics, hook, line, and sinker, because it's purely out of spite, it's starting to show a change and a shift in the culture of left-leaning political content, in a sense where it's either you agree with a certain set of moral principles that you truly believe in, or you look at somebody else who you hate and you do whatever they think is wrong. Like, this goes back to the this is reminiscent of the RGR debate, right? This is very similar, because the RGR Doe debate, what the debates cracked down to was Doe was saying some spicy shit about RGR, but at the end of the day, Doe was like, hey, I just think your position is weird, and here's my personal story. RGR was like, well, that personal story doesn't really check out, because logically, like, she's attacking the personal story. So once RGR got backlash off of that, the entire community of the left that was against Doe was saying RGR deserved none of that punishment, even if she was wrong. So again, they're not addressing RGR's arguments. They're not even trying to confront as to why she may have got any criticism or why she's so belligerent about her wrong positions. They're more looking at the outward criticism that she received. Like, for example, MrGirl. MrGirl is being called a pedophile. Why is he being called a pedophile? Well, whenever you confront them about that same argument, why he's being called a pedophile, they don't care about that. Because either they say, oh yeah, he's gross, but, oh, he's not a pedophile, but, because they're more focused on the outlash and backlash of the community against him rather than his actual arguments confronting them. Because again, if you confront these people about said arguments, they either jokingly say, oh, he's beige, or a fresh breath of air that we have yet to have in this community, and this is the best arc, and he's to keep coming on Destiny's stream. It's really concerning. It really is. And depressing, honestly, because we've gone through this multiple times. The whole argument is not platforming him is bad. It's not, oh, he's going to turn people to pedophile. That's a horrible argument. The argument is, if we continue falling for tactics that are simple, bare bones, like, oh, I just want to hear people to talk about edgy shit, and then when confronted with edgy shit doesn't necessarily flesh out his ideas in logical sense, then we are just basically flaunting edgy points for no fucking reason, with no critical thought. We're just doing it because our opponents hate it. Like, what's the point of that? What's the point of acting and doing shit in spite if there's no political intent behind it? There's no true, actual meaning behind doing that other than pissing people off. Like, what's the point of that? Like, what's the point of discussion even anymore? The problem, MrGirl, keeps continuing, it keeps flourishing, and I don't see this ending anytime soon because, again, spite-driven support does last for quite a bit in the short term, but I'd say like 3 or 4 months from now, it'll probably just peter down to where he was originally. And yeah, again, not calling him a pedophile. I never have called him a pedophile. My argument is I can understand why people call him that because of his given content, but I would never explicitly believe that because I have no proof of that evidence. So yeah.